All right, guys. I first want to let you know that my voice is a little off, so I hope that doesn't take away from, this amazing conversation that we're about to have with a great friend of mine, Matt Drinkhahn. And here's why you might want to listen today. The reason you might want to listen is that most people who spend time with Matt leave the conversation feeling like they're better humans, feeling like they're more accepted, loved, respected. They're charged, they're fueled, they're optimistic about the future. And Matt has this effect on people. And that's why I love being around him. That's why I wanted to have this conversation. It's why the men in our community have chosen to support Matt so much in his life, and especially with the launch of this book that we're going to get to today, The Eternal Optimist. And I think that what you'll find in this conversation and why you want to lean in is because this is just the real life story of a man choosing growth. That's it. It's a man who chose growth. It's not a perfect man. It's not a man who never faced adversity. It's not a man who had it together from birth. It's a man who's gotten it together in such a way that it inspires people, but also his vulnerability of who he is in his heart is also what inspires people. It's the parts of the book where the men in our threads, our Telegram chat threads have been like, "Hey man, is this a story of you? Are you this character in the book? Is
hmm
this, and ultimately what I think you'd find in the book and what you'd find in this conversation is just a journey. So if you like journey stories, we're about to take one. Matt, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, John. It is a real pleasure to be here. You're very kind for the things you shared. I'm very happy to hear those. I do have one correction to make, though. You made the statement that I'm not a perfect man. And actually, I'd like to say that I am perfect, perfectly imperfect.
There you go.
And yeah, so just thank you for that opportunity.
Exactly, man.
Uh,
Hey, let's I think a launching off place would just be for me. How are you right now, man? How's your heart today? How are you feeling? What's going on? What's your emotional state as enter this conversation?
Kind of a tale of two cities here, John. On the challenging side, I'm getting ready to go out of town for the longest amount of time I've ever been away from my kids.
Is
And
that right?
that's 4 nights. And that starts at the conclusion of this discussion. And so that leaves me a little bit sad. And at the same time, it made me really lean into my daily Stoic reading this morning that Ali Jafarian of the community sent me. And it's all about being present. So this morning, we spent an extra 15 minutes playing with Barbies and stuffed animals that I normally might not have spent. So
Yeah.
that was incredibly worthwhile. Okay. On the other side, I am incredibly optimistic and excited because I get to go spend the next 4 days with my front row dad band camping in the Great Smoky Mountains in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So that's incredibly exciting. I've never slept outside well intentionally before. So leave it at that. So this is the first time I'm going to be with some great brothers. So very excited for that. As of our recording date today, which is March 20th, Wednesday, I'm excited for listening to Ben Greenfield tomorrow
Yeah, that's right.
on the Front Row Dad Summit. So I'm gonna miss part of the actual hiking tomorrow just so I can stay at the cabin and be there for the summit because the summits are some of the most impactful events for me personally over the course of the year. So I never miss those now. So yeah, just a lot of things going on, and very grateful to be present with you right now.
Thanks, Matt. That's cool.
Yeah.
For the guys who don't know you, tell us about your family.
Yes, well, happily married for 10 years now, and I've got three lovely daughters that are 8, 7, and 5. I'm happy to report that everyone's healthy and alive, so very grateful for that every day. And we live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been a member of the Front Row Dads now for about 5 years. I still remember our reconnection conversation when I was driving to a golf tournament back in March 2019. So that that's a little bit about me. Professionally, I'm a business coach and I coach high-level executives to help them grow and scale their companies and overcome their perfectionism. And then a little bit personally, I'm 6'6". I'm a scratch golfer, and I'm okay at karaoke. So yeah, those are a couple things to start.
I love that. That's cool, man. Um, when did you start writing this book? And I don't mean, I don't mean philosophically, because that would have been at birth, but when it comes to actually putting pen to paper, when did that process begin for you? How long ago?
Well, as any recovering perfectionist, I've got two answers. One answer is 8 years ago. I had a very specific conversation with a mutual friend of ours, Trent Booth from Vector and
Mm,
Cutco. And he asked Matt, how you doing? And I hadn't talked to him in 15 years. I said, doing great. What are you up to? I'm writing a book. I'm 85% of the way done. That was 7 years ago. And maybe I was 85% of the way done. This book has nothing to do with what I was 85% of the way done with.
yeah.
So if there's anybody out there in the front row dads or listening today that wants to write a book, it can be the longest, most challenging thing. And I made it simple.
Yeah.
I I paid a publishing company, Mark Victor Hansen's publishing company, from the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. I paid him, and once I put the money down to get this book started, that's when I locked in and was committed. And that started on March 20th, 2023, exactly 1 year ago today.
Wow.
So we set out. I wrote it in about 3 months, and then from there, the proofreading, editing, and the reading team, it was it was out and ready by the middle of January, and we just launched a couple weeks ago. So that's the whole thing. Took a year.
As a
Whole thing.
dad, how does it feel knowing that, part of your heart is in this book for your kids to maybe one day read?
Well, I'll say that first of all, it's an emotional response because my oldest daughter has already read it. The
Yeah, that's
first
great.
special thanks people that I call out in the book are my three daughters. It was very emotionally gratifying to model for them as they saw me writing and working on it, and they saw me on launch day going into what you'd call phone jam mode and calling a bunch of people and promoting the book. So it's been very positive to do it. And John, check this out. This may be the most gratifying part of all of this is that if you look at the cover of the book, it's
Yep.
the Eternal Optimist. It's never too late. It's never too late is the subtitle. Recently, one of my daughters got into let's just say a spirited dispute with the other daughter. And this has happened from time to time. It's been one of the big challenges in my life is the patience and grace
Oh,
of dealing with that. You know what I mean? So they get in that dispute, and then she comes downstairs later and says, "I'm sorry, mommy, for doing that, and I'm working on how I talk to my sister. It's never too late." And when she
oh,
said that, I was all torn up about that because to see
oh,
that they're always listening, they're always paying attention, whether we realize it or not. And that was really gratifying, John, to see that she is paying attention to the name of the book. So after that, I asked her about it. She pulls out her art journal and she drew a cover of the book, then gave it to me. And I have it hanging over there in the office. So yeah, it's been really cool for them to see it and for me to be present just to them and how they take in the whole book writing process.
this is
Yeah,
beautiful, man.
yeah,
Oh,
man,
I
it's
love,
cool.
I love hearing that. That's so cool.
Yeah, man.
Let's get into the book then. Let's talk about the story. What's the storyline that you can share, or what's the teaser that you can share without giving everything away? And who's it for?
Great question. And I'll share, first of all, this is a real life story with names and dates and places changed to protect the innocent. And it's a story of my life. And I share who's it for. It's for any dad out there. And since this is the Front Row Dads podcast, it could be for anyone who is related to or that is in a relationship with someone like this character, the main character. It can be anyone who works with a person who thinks like and acts like this character. And specifically the character, it's based on me. The archetype we're talking about is a person who is a recovering perfectionist, highly ambitious, highly driven to achieve. They may have some ego involved and really appreciate the status of being well known, being an achiever, the financial wherewithal that comes with, achieving and succeeding in business. And they did all of that for the family. just picture this if you're a dad listening to this right now. You say you do everything for your family. Say that you're a family man with a business. And at the same time, they get what's left over at the end of the day when our tanks are drained. They get the worst of us, the most challenging part of us, because when we get that business email or business call, whatever happens after that, they deal with the aftermath. Our family does. They are present to us being in a secondary relationship with our cell phone, and with any text from any person that we might serve, and we say we do everything for the family, and at the same time, it's only half truth, only half truth. And I had to come to grips with that, and I'm sure a lot of dads, a lot of men come to grips with that idea that I do things for the family, and there's some guilt or shame that I'm not always present. And how do we reconcile that? And this book is all about, like, one of the main storylines is how we come to reconcile and own the fact that we may say we're doing it all for them, but we leave in our wake a lot of people that are disappointed, don't get the quality time, don't get all of us.
Yeah.
And this is a one man's journey about how that hurt all the people around him, and how finally, by practicing, some of the core values we go over the book, we're able to overcome that and be present with the family. That's who it's for, John. That's why I wrote it, is to help men who are struggling, like I was for the longest time, with this idea of being a family man with a business. You taught me this when I joined the Front Row Dads, family man with business. And I said that's who I was and who I wanted to be. Full transparency, I was not that. It was on my terms only. Yeah. So how many times? I don't know if Tatiana's ever said this to you. Julie says this to me frequently. That's how embarrassed I am to say this, that she says this to me frequently. It's like, Matt, I feel like we're all just kind of going through life, and we're all on the roller coaster, and you're riding and driving it, and we're all just along for the ride with you. It's always on your terms, always through your lens.
Yeah.
And she's saying this with a smile on her face. I know that I'm doing some damage here by only doing it through my lens. I don't know. Does that connect with you at all? Have you
Of
ever
course.
felt
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I feel there's like anything, there's pros and cons to having that. There's the all the benefit of having somebody that's driving, that's leading, that's
Mhm.
that's just clearing the path, and that other people are embarking on the same journey, maybe figuratively behind them, that there is benefit to that.
Mhm.
There's also a consequence to that. There's a consequence to, if your focus is only ahead, if it's only on the mission, then, and you see this in teams. Um, I saw this yesterday. I took Tiger to go see Arthur the King. Have you seen this, the previews for the movie?
No, not yet. No.
Okay,
No.
so this is a Mark Wahlberg film. It's an adventure race. They meet a dog along the way. Like, this is all part of the thing. And one of the parts of the movie, and I'm not giving anything away here, is that Mark is so ambitious as the leader of this eco challenge team, or this adventure racing team, whatever it was called, that he's so ambitious that he doesn't really pay attention to his teammates. And as a result of that, there's kind of this bonk out session where he's so driven, but it costs them dearly in the end. So that is the story of most people who are driving, chasing, leading, ambitious people. Yeah.
Yeah. And and you'll note in the book, in a number of cases, there's the word and it's in all caps.
Yes.
And that's my
Yes.
word. And it's possible that two differing realities can exist at the same space at the same time. So I believe it's possible to be a family man with a business and be a recovering perfectionist and
No
have
doubt.
made what you might call our mistakes, even though those mistakes are really the raw material that we need to grow,
That's
to
exactly right.
teach us, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's possible all these things are true. So we can make progress. I've made a lot of progress. You've helped me make a lot of progress, but we've got to start by truly recognizing that this is a challenge and a lot of us face it. And if we're not able to take the blinders off and be self-aware first, then we're going to continue to suffer the same challenge over and over again. So if anyone out there is listening to this and you feel like, man, this is really hard for me. I don't know how to break out. I don't know how to get out of this cyclical place where I want to spend quality time with the family. I want to do this with them. If you don't know how, then check out and read the book because it's an example of all the thoughts that many of us have probably had in granular detail. Yes, because I can't over communicate in great detail. And then, the questions I started to ask myself as I was coached to make some of these changes. So it is a book on how to make some of these transformations happen, John.
How did you come up with the name, the Eternal Optimist?
I wanted to take into account the core values. And when I was at a front row dad retreat 3 years ago, in a couple weeks from now, it was a Key West, and our mutual friend Jeff Woods did an exercise with us with those one thing value cards. And the values that I came up with were optimism, gratitude, self-discipline, and curiosity, four of them. So the eternal optimist, if you look at what optimism is, seeing things through a positive lens. And I feel that could be a little bit naive. I think that stereotype could be a little bit true. And it could be naive if it's just everything's got to be positive. That's what I call toxic positivity. Everything's just got to be positive all the time. That's not the way I live at all. The eternal optimist sees the positive in everything, whether it's the good stuff, the bad stuff, the easy, the hard. Everything has an opportunity to teach us and help us learn and grow if we're open to it. So the eternal optimist is the person that when you learn how to be open to the possibilities that are out there, then you can truly live as an eternal optimist. And it's never too late to start. Whether you are a brand new dad or you're someone who has kids that are already grown up and they're big, it's never too late to go and have that conversation. Our mutual friend John Berghoff taught me in that book with Sherry Torres and Jackie Stavros, Conversations Worth Having.
Mm.
He helped me to see that the power of the relationship, it can be defined in any one conversation. We can change the course of history in any one conversation. And in this book, there are a number of inflection points where life changes during that conversation. Our lives right now are changing. And we're inspiring someone who's listening to this show right now that can help them to make that change. And that's what the book is all about. That's the second lesson is, you can make the change at any point. It's never too late to make that first step and make the change. So that's how the title came to be. Is I wanted to inspire people that wherever you're at, doesn't matter. You can be the highest of highs, or you can be at rock bottom. You can make change starting now when you're open to it, when you're asking some questions of curiosity towards it. Right.
You're
So
very good at giving credit. You're very good at acknowledging people, where you learned something, who taught you something. I've seen your notes, I've seen your journals. You're very good at writing down notes, recapping, and then telling the story. Is that something that's always been natural for you, kind of came easy? Have you worked at that? Do you remember where you really developed that skill?
that's a great question. And thank you for asking. And I might start to cry here in a second because I learned that skill from my father. For all the things that he taught me, and it was mostly all awesome. Maybe one of the most valuable lessons is that when he was selling Amway back in the day and selling toothpaste and vitamins, I remember this back when I was in high school when I was setting Amway appointments for him. One of the things he taught me was, Matt, if you're crushing it, things are going really well, always give credit to the team. If things are not going well, then always own the credit yourself as the leader, right? So I, it's all ego talking if I say that I did all this on my own. No, I did not, man. The way that I was able to make these changes, I would say because of, we'll just give credit to three people right now. One of them is a guy named Adam Stock, who's right here in the Front Row Dads community. And he taught me that when I started to yell and get upset and be frustrated with my kids, he taught me the question, Matt, how might the ideal father Matt act right now in this situation at this moment? So I turned that into a tripwire, like just a trigger question whenever the kids started to battle, which happens frequently and it still happens, just less frequently now, right? Whenever the kids do something that my perfectionist tendencies say is wrong, don't do that. Do it the way I tell you to do it. Whenever that happens, I got my friend Mike Wagner. Mike Wagner with his long hair and ponytail, also in the front row dads. Mike is sitting on my shoulder. Just imagine a little miniature Mike and a little miniature Adam sitting on my shoulder. Mike is saying, what's the worst that could happen right now if I don't correct this behavior? And this is hard for a recovering perfectionist here, right? Because I should correct this now. They need to obey now. They are disrespecting me right now. That's all my inner stuff talking, right? So I listen to Mike, and now I got a tripwire of Mike sitting on my shoulder asking me the question anytime that this hard stuff happens with the kids. What's the worst that happen if I don't correct the behavior now? And almost every time they solve it themselves. I let them go, they solve it themselves. All right. My other friend Tyler Gunter, part of this group that we have called the Acceptance Squad. Uh, Tyler, he's helped me to come face to face with, the stuff that I went through with my dad, right? Out of all the great things my dad taught me, I still had a chip on my shoulder and still need to work through some of my own stuff. And Tyler provided a place that I could talk to, a person I could kind of lean into and share about my dad. So those three have had a tremendous impact. So you ask about, how'd you learn to give credit, or why do you do that? I learned it from my dad, and I always want to do it because I am not here, and what I would say super successful because I figured everything out. If it were left up to me, I would be rich and lonely and wondering where my life went if I did everything on my own. I would be this super
Mm.
ambitious, toxic, positive person who couldn't quite understand why every single person didn't see it the way I did, because this is the right way. Get it together, people. But I learned to be open and curious to the feedback of others. And I think,
Yeah.
John, you have been one of the best models of this for us with some of the things that you've shared. So I want to give credit where credit's due. Not
Mm.
me, it's for the sum of all the people around us. Yeah.
What do you think are the ingredients to being a great friend, a great brother to somebody? What do you see are the ingredients of the brothers that are so impactful for you?
Yeah.
Because and the reason I ask that question is I really do see two different types of people come into our community over the last 8 years. And one type of person comes in and they're like, what? This is filled with amazing people. Everywhere I turn, there's another great individual. And I learned this from them and I learned that from them. And then, quite sadly, and what breaks my heart sometimes, the guy will come in and he's like, yeah, I really didn't connect with anybody. I didn't, and I try not to judge that because I don't think that Front
Yeah.
Row Dads is for everybody. I don't think any community can be the place for everybody. And so aside from the natural element of like, yes, there might be a good fit and not a good fit for a variety of reasons, I also think some of it is like it's training and skills, and like brotherhood is something we learn how to do. Building friendship can be a skill that we learn how to do. I don't know that that's just a
Yeah.
given. Like what you just said, it's like left to our own, if left in a silo, like we might end up
Yeah.
here, but through the strength of a community and these voices, these miniature figures that sit on our shoulder and guide us through situations. And I have countless examples of those also, of mutual friends of ours. And I tell the story of like John Kane picking up Tiger and putting his hand on his chest and being like, I see a light in you. And because he did that one time 10 years ago, I have picked up multiple buddies' children, held them in my arms, put my hand on their chest, and been like, I see a light in you, just because I'm modeling what I
Yeah.
saw a buddy do.
Yes.
So
Yes.
going back to the question, it's like, how do we learn to be a great friend? How might we look at brotherhood? Because I think you do it amazingly well. I think you're actually like one of the people I would point to if somebody's like, how do I become an amazing brother? I'd be like, look at Matt Drinkhahn and try
Oh,
to
that's
just
kind.
emulate some of what he's doing. But what do you think that is, man? What are the ingredients?
That's kind of you to say, John. I really appreciate that coming from you. Here are some thoughts. One, I'd say unconditional acceptance and
Mm,
radical transparency. I had a conversation with my bandmates last night, and shared, here's all the things I love about you, and here's where you're messing up.
yeah,
Right? Because he asked me for advice, so I gave him some advice. I don't just volunteer randomly. I don't offer any unsolicited advice to anybody in the world.
yeah.
If they ask, I'm happy because I have an opinion on everything. But unconditional about everything, believe me. Unconditional acceptance, radical transparency. I mean, it's a real friend if they can tell you the truth, their truth from their
Yeah.
lens. I'm not a yes man. I'm not here just to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
That's not the key to growth. It's being real with people, man. That's it. I feel I could talk to you about anything at any time, and you're not going to turn it back on me and say, that's the worst thing I've ever heard, and you're a horrible human. I feel that you will listen and you'll be able to accept what I'm saying. You may not agree with it, but you'll be able to accept that this is the person showing up in front of you. Judgment free, feel free to share. And if we had that kind of community, which I know we have here at the retreats, at the summit calls, at the band calls that we have, everything that we do here in the Front Row Dads that has helped me to lean more into this has really helped me to just to quote a mutual person we know, I'd say like Bob Berg really helped me to become a go-giver, right?
Hmm.
Someone who pours into others without anything I want in return. Just want to help them. And by helping them, guess who else I'm helping? Everyone else in the community, helping myself. I'm helping future generations of my family by pouring into others and practicing what we preach. So you asked the question, that's my response is unconditional acceptance, radical transparency, and just becoming someone that can give to others in the community without expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
That's it.
100%. And to speak core values of Front Row Dads, this lead domino, I feel like this giving that you're speaking of is like tipping a domino, and that domino sets off this cascade of something, and sometimes it feels like maybe that comes back to you very quickly, and sometimes you're never sure if it really comes back to you, but it's almost undeniable that the ripple has been set. Something is happening. You've caused change. And something else you said, acceptance and transparency. I've been thinking a lot about trust. And I was thinking about how what really creates brotherhood for me is just trust. At the core of it all is that word. And I'm wondering if the ingredients of trust are acceptance and transparency, because that's really what, you know, our group, I don't know if you've heard the guys talking about, what's her name? Becky something. She was just on Huberman's
Yeah,
podcast,
Becky Kennedy. Yeah, good inside.
Good
Yeah.
Inside, the book. She talks about, am I real? Kids want to know, am I real? Like, and the way I heard her say that was like, when I have an experience, can I be validated for like being a human who had that experience? Like not made wrong for feeling whatever they felt, for experiencing whatever they experienced, because you know that's what I hear and see a lot is like when we as parents or we as partners or we as brothers, we're not honest, um if we're
Yeah.
not in acceptance, if we're not being transparent, that's a form of gaslighting. it's
Yeah.
it's it's like it's a form of gaslighting because we don't reveal our truth to the person, and then they can't learn to trust themselves. So I think that what happens in a brotherhood is like, can I be here in an environment where I can learn to trust myself? Can I be me in front of the guys and then have them honestly, openly, transparently be in a relationship with me so that I know I'm real?
Hmm.
That's it. Like I think it's the same thing for kids as it is for adults, because as we know, we're really dealing with our inner child most of the time anyway, you know,
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
of the time.
Well, I like the old adage, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah.
And I remember my first Front Row Dad's retreat. It was going on 5 years ago in San Diego in 2019 October. And I remember the question I had going in, did the ask give exercise? My ask was, how do I get it so that my wife will engage in some of these personal growth exercises, do the miracle morning with me? It was all about externally. How do I get them to change?
Yeah.
And once I was around a couple people in that room, Brandon Miller was one of them. Hal Elrod was one of them. I look at Evan Keller was my first partner, right, in one
That's
of those
cool.
groups, right? And when they reflected back to me what they gave me some real feedback, what they really saw, I realized, wow, this is the place I need to be because the people there were real.
Yeah.
And they weren't just yes people, they were willing to accept me, all my flaws and all my stuff, willing to accept me. So you talk about trust. Yeah, these are the core ingredients. I mean, we could go all into, Pat Lencioni's first book, where the Five Temptations of the CEO, like trust is the top of the pyramid, baby. And that's like the core thing that I'm coaching organizations to, is how to establish it. So yes, all of this is built on trust. How do we get that? Those are some of the ingredients, those things I mentioned to get to trust, I think, John.
When
Yeah.
on the same vein of transparency, people being honest with you, what type of feedback have you been getting about the book? What have people been reflecting back? What are they telling you? How is it hitting them? Because and I'm
Yeah.
imagining that's like one of the great joys of putting the book out there is just having somebody share their experience with you.
Yes. Here's the short answer that's all ego based. It's really cool to have a book that says number one bestseller on the cover. That was a nice dopamine hit, right? Here's the reality. That none of that mattered. That's all surface level. The real impact of the book is when I got the first call from one of our front row dad brothers who read it, and we cried together. And he said, "I think that you just wrote a book and you were sitting in my shoes, and this is me." And yes, that's what's meaningful, is to hear that first piece of feedback that says, "Yeah, I feel like I've had my blinders on too, and I'm not sure how to take them off. So can you help me?" And yes, this book is for that person who feels that way. So that was the first review I got. And I love that. And of course, if you look at the book, I put some of my favorite people that I really respect on the cover of the book, our mutual friends and the dads, Dr. Kelly Flanagan, Justin Donald. They were part of the pre-reading team in advance, and they read it and they gave some great feedback. So to get feedback from Kelly Flanagan, who's like my favorite author,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah,
was very meaningful to get, right? And then from Justin, I've been in his mastermind and we've been friends for 20 years. To get it from Justin, who's someone who does
yeah.
deep personal work on himself, that was very meaningful to hear it. But it's a calling card, John, for anyone, no matter where they're at, if they've done a lot of work or this is their first foray into really looking at themselves in the mirror. And sometimes you may like what you see, sometimes you may not. Anyone, any of those shoes, there's something in it that can help them, whatever stage of the journey they're in, right? So yeah, you can pick it up on Amazon. Oh, can I pitch it? Pick it up on Amazon, team.
Yeah,
The Eternal Optimist. Never too late.
100%.
Yeah.
Tell me about
Uh,
your relationship, Matt, to shame and guilt. And why I bring that up is that it to me, it's like there are so many things that you've grown and changed, grown through, changed in your life, evolved into being a beacon in many ways, this positive force, this disciplined soul, and how does, if it does, I'm making a presumption here, of course,
yeah.
but it's like sometimes and further context, not to over talk the question, but I want to tell you why I'm asking, because you've probably heard me say this. It's like leading the front row dads. Sometimes when I mess up, I have extra guilt and shame because I have this, like, I should be better, right? I've been in this work for so long. I've interviewed so many people. I should be better than that. And so
Yes.
it comes with extra weighted guilt and shame on top of it. And I think a little bit of guilt's okay if I define it the way of like, guilt is I really did something wrong and my inner guidance system is saying you should feel a little off for that. That was,
Yes.
shame is this like I'm not enough as a human, which maybe is not quite as healthy as like an appropriate dose of guilt. But for you, how do those two things enter your world? How do you deal with them? How do you deal with the dark moments, the dark days, the times when you're not maybe so optimistic in your heart? What's
Yes.
your process there?
Well, I'd say first, shame and guilt are, let's say they're cousins. They're in the same bucket. I like your definitions of them, and I've very versed and experienced with both shame and guilt. They are both welcome at my dinner table because I know every time they show up, they're here to teach me something. They're here to course correct me and offer me a chance to redirect my energy. So I view them as an ally and an asset, not as something to run from or be afraid of. I used to keep it to myself and not want to talk about it, just suffer in silence, the way I was trained or the way I grew up. And when I joined the dads and when I hired coaches, and when I got in the band, that is when I started to redefine my relationship with shame and guilt. And one of the things that I would credit being in the front row dads was helped me tremendously in my life, John, is when I joined the dads, I used to have a little bit of a temper, and my ability to work through anger was want to just compartmentalize it and just let it be. I can work through it. I don't need to even address it, right? And that came with a lot of shame and guilt that was built up inside that I didn't talk to anybody about. Enter the front row dads, I started to talk about it, and I started to realize that shame and guilt were present for me whenever I had a couple of recurring things that would show up in my life, in my mind. Whenever I was using the word but, whenever I was using the word should, which are the two big words that for me show that I'm feeling some type of shame for something that I could have, should have, would have done. My perfectionism is kicking in when I'm using the words but and should. Those are the key indicators for me that I am in this space of feeling it and feeling my shame and guilt. But the way that I came to own it was to make the transition and even journal and write this out. And I came to this conversation today having written this out. And I want to share it with the community because it's something that has served me so well in overcoming shame and guilt as an anchor, instead of turning them into a springboard to help me grow. So anytime I feel like a shame or a guilt, or I feel like I did something that maybe my ideal self didn't want to do or didn't like that I did it, here's how I might own it with myself, John. I literally go to my journal and I write this down. Welcome to my table, my friends. Come in and have a seat. Mr. Shame and Mr. Guilt. You're always welcome here. Every time you show up, I'm okay with it because I know you're here to teach me something. Thank you for that. You're much appreciated. I accept that you're going to show up from time to time and offer me advice. Moving forward, you will have diminishing power over me and you'll always be welcome. So I like to shift the shame and guilt from something that makes me feel bad to something that I can use to my advantage. And
Wait a minute.
that's the way I
When
do it.
did you write that?
I write that any and every time I start to feel shame or guilt
Is
or
that
this
what's written on that
perfectionism.
paper though? Is that what's written?
Yeah. Yep.
When did you write that?
Well, this one I wrote on May 10th of 2023.
Wow.
That's when I wrote that one. The first time I started to practice this was about a decade ago,
Yeah.
whenever I would feel something come up, some emotion or some challenge, instead
How
of
did you
just,
just find that so quickly though?
I write it all the time because I make mistakes all the time. Like I said, I am perfect. Excuse me, perfectly imperfect. I'm
Yeah.
making these mistakes just like you and everyone else all the
Pretty
time.
good timing. We didn't rehearse that at all. Like that's an
Yeah.
off the cuff question. It just looked like that was completely dialed in. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I write that so often and I say it so often because I want to totally own it. And every
Mm,
time that stuff shows up, it will have less and less control, less and less power over me because I'm owning it. All
yeah.
right. So consider that, friends. Consider that, writing that down. And I like to write a lot of the affirmations. I mean, I've been practicing Hal's Miracle Morning since July of 2015. So this is on conscious or unconscious competence by now, right? It's on autopilot. Whenever I make these mistakes, I go and write about it, and here's how it's helping me. That's helped me to shift over time. This feeling of perfectionism, this feeling that I'm not enough, and this feeling of shame and guilt. So you asked the question, and that's how I battle it. That's how I've overcome it. That's how I still work through it when it shows up, John, with shame and
Very
guilt.
cool.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for sharing that, man. I know that we have a few minutes left here, and I want to just give you an opportunity, Matt, to say anything you want to say about the book or anything that's on your heart. So just is there, if anything, that you want to tell anybody listening to the show right now that would be an invitation to the book, perhaps a challenge, an assignment? Take it wherever you want.
Thank you, John. And I feel that most people think they should probably be farther along. They judge themselves and they say, I should be farther. Well, my feedback to those people is you are not as far along as you might want to be. You're closer than you think to making that big step forward. It's the next step that's going to help you overcome that biggest challenge. What's the soonest, smallest step we might take to overcome that challenge? And for anyone listening, I would encourage you to check out the book to hear that there are other people out there who are challenged in the same way that you might be with trying to overcome this need to control, this need for everything to be perfect, and this need to do things through your own lens. If you ever feel that, if you ever heard some of the things today that connect with you, then the book will be a way to connect with you even deeper and possibly spur on some action that can help you to live that life of your dreams, that can help you to show up as the best dad that you can possibly be and spend that quality time and everything that you want with your family, show up to be the best husband that you can be, and ultimately show up to be the best human being you can be in service to others. And this book is a gateway for that. So I invite you to lean in and level up, my friends.
Very cool. Matt, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for your words, your open heart, your stories, your vulnerability. Appreciate you. Thanks for being a front row dad, contributing so much to our community. We're really stronger because you're a part of this, and I feel very fortunate to be able to do life with you in the ways that we do. I look forward to seeing you at another event. I hope you have an amazing time with your band and enjoy the great outdoors. And that I hope that the time away from your family brings you closer upon your return. I'm so happy for you. For anybody listening, you want a copy of Matt's book? I'd love to buy you one. Here's my ask. Write a review on this podcast, wherever you listen. Mention Matt in this episode. Say something that you appreciated about the conversation or what you learned from Matt. And then screenshot that, send that to support@frontrowdads.com with your address. This is for all US listeners. Sorry, guys, we're not set up to ship internationally right now, but send us your review, a screenshot of it, your address, and I will mail you a copy of Matt's book, The Eternal Optimist, as a thank you for listening to this episode, for supporting Matt and his work. So there you go. That's it, guys. Thanks for being here today. Thanks, Matt, to you. Good luck on your upcoming adventure. And to all the men out there listening, I hope you find your brotherhood. I hope you find your way back to your family. And I hope that you continue to be a family man with a business, not a businessman with a family. Thanks, guys.